Welcome back. You're watching SABC News. Cape Town officials say that 75 structures have been gutted at the Phola Park informal settlement in Philippi, leaving 380 people displaced. Hot and very windy conditions fueled the second fire at the settlement this week. Residents say that they've had a miserable start to 2023.
A double blow to residents of Phola Park. Many of them lost all their possessions, while their homes have been reduced to ash and rubble. The blaze, which broke out late yesterday afternoon, came just days after the New Year's Day fire, which claimed one life and left some 700 people displaced.
It's New Year and we are really stressed because some of us, we bought school uniform already and we have babies that now we are struggling, they don't have food, and with some of the other people here around, they have young children, babies like 6 months, 1 year, up to 2 years. They don't have nappies, they don't have anything to feed them.
I don't know what happened, but I tell for government, can you make a plan for the people? Because the lot of people who lost their houses here. So please, can I make something?
The community says they are still waiting to hear from authorities when those left displaced in the earlier fire can start rebuilding. Many affected residents have sought shelter from neighbours and relatives.
According to the information to the online, the neighbours, we suspect fully in terms of the electricity, it's an overload of electricity because it was after load shedding. After just power back, then this started. Hence, we suspect it's because of the load shedding.
Authorities say various infrastructure assessments are continuing.
Various city departments are on site and busy with assessments. Eskom to restore electricity, water and sanitation will attend to damaged infrastructure, and solid waste will remove fire debris. The Department of Home Affairs was also activated to assist residents with their identity documents.
Emergency and humanitarian aid organisations are on site, assisting with basic essentials and hot meals.
How many more fires are we going to put out? Some of the people on the waiting list for 20 years. The population is increasing. Where in the past, where there was only 2 or 3 people living in a structure, has gone up to 10. People are literally building on every available space next to them. They are building double-story houses. And sometimes when the firefighters reach out to these areas to come put out the fire, they cannot gain access. Either the structure is built over the fire hydrant, there's not a gap to go through. So we're appealing to national government. It's by time you guys come onto the ground to come see what's happening.
The 2 fires that ripped through Phola Park this week alone have left more than 1,000 people displaced. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
An 8-year-old girl has been swept away in the Umsunduzi River in Peace Valley in Ashdown in Pietermaritzburg in KwaZulu-Natal. It's believed that the child's mother was trying to cross a low-lying bridge whilst carrying her 2-month-old baby. That's when her 8-year-old daughter was swept away in the fast-flowing river on Thursday afternoon. The incident comes after heavy rains began to fall over the province. Police and rescuers are continuing the search for the child.
Meanwhile, several homes suffered damage after a blocked stormwater drain caused flooding in Cato Manor in Durban. 8 families have suffered flood damage due to their homes as a result. One of the victims couldn't keep the tears away when she told the SABC of how she tried in vain to save her personal belongings and her furniture from the rising floodwaters. While still tallying the damage, government says reports were received of several homes in Ladysmith in the center of the province having partially collapsed. Meanwhile, the South African Weather Service says southern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, such as Port Shepstone on the south coast and Ikopo in southern KwaZulu-Natal, remain on alert level 5 as disruptive rains are expected to continue. The service says the central and northern parts of the province have been downgraded to alert level 2.
Disaster teams in KwaZulu-Natal are on high alert as a level 9 weather warning for disruptive rain has been issued. The rains bring the possibility of localised flooding in low-lying areas, vulnerable settlements, as well as roads and bridges. Well, for a little bit more on rescue efforts, we're now joined via Zoom by Abed Karrim, who's the head of Intergovernment Relations and Disaster Response at the Alimdaad Foundation. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Good to talk to you again. This alert level 9 must be a concern to you. How are you getting ready for what is likely to come?
Good evening to you and your viewers at this part of the night, and from a very drizzly and cold Ladysmith here in KZN. With regards to how we are prepared, I think we need to go back to the 4th of this month, where Alert 9 was issued by the Weather Bureau, and the probability of serious rain with possible impact. However, we as the Alimdaad Foundation have been, called into the JOC meetings that were activated immediately on the 4th at 6 p.m. and been given the background as to what the Alert 9 had mentioned and so forth. Like you rightfully said, and the visual showing that there has been a lot of water and damages at some parts of, Cato Minor, Pietermaritzburg, and other areas. But sitting in the provincial JOC meeting, which was very activated, as I said, on the 4th, different districts had given their input today. And what we're finding is that there has been a bit of a calm. Yes, there has been lots of rain has fallen, lots of informal settlements, more specifically, like you mentioned, in Cato Minor in Durban. And of course, here in Itugela district, where we are based, we had a call today from Okoshlamba, that is Bergville, where a old senior citizen, Ukoko Mkulu's house collapsed due to the severe downfall of rain, and the entire home, which is built with mud, collapsed. So the Alimdaad Foundation, in partnership with disaster management, is assisting with blankets, mattresses, food, etc. And the neighbors were very kind enough in this particular incident to highlight to our viewers. They built a tin shack for the senior citizen and their 2 grandchildren here in Bergville. So the Alimdaad Foundation will be out there tomorrow to assist this family with whatever is needed in terms of making them much more comfortable. Also, just to inform, the Amajuba district in Den Hauser, there was also an incident where a house had collapsed and 2 persons were injured and they were taken to hospital. So these are some of the feedback that is coming through the provincial JOC. And as you mentioned earlier on in Ladysmith, the rivers are very high, and as you know, and the listeners know, last year in January for 19 days, we were involved in the flood impact here in Ladysmith. But we were very fortunate. Yes, we had rains, but most of the damages, or incidents rather, have been houses collapsing, their homes being flooded because living on the floodplain, etc., etc. So the Alimdaad Foundation, in partnership with all district disaster units and all the other government departments, are all on standby. What we can also inform is that the entire KZ and all districts, for example, we are in Tugela. Tomorrow there is a DOC meeting, District Operational Center meeting. Sunday they are meeting till the alert drops to a more comfortable, and like you said, it is on level 5 now to a certain part of the north of the province. Where we are on level 2 at the moment. So we pray to the Almighty that, that we get beneficial rain and not destructive rain.
8 months ago, we saw these floods cause havoc, devastation, and sadly, mass loss of life. That saw people get displaced and infrastructure still needing to be attended to. How has this complicated efforts this time around? Because there's still people from 8 months ago that need help and assistance, and roads and infrastructure that's still damaged.
Yes, correctly said. And what we are aware of, that we have seen and on news and have been reading, that the provincial government has made efforts to house these displaced people from the floods that was 8 months ago in Durban. And they have also been placed into buildings that was, I believe, was purchased by the provincial government. However, they rightfully said there are many of them that have still not gotten on their feet, and there has to be assistance that has to be ongoing by the provincial government, human settlements, and etc. With regards to infrastructure and roads and so forth, you and I know best that this is the competency of the provincial government, and I would believe that there is continuation of trying to repair them. At what pace? Well, that's your guess and my guess, but we do know that there are certain places where there has been improvements, there has been some kind of work that has been done, hopefully.
And I suppose access continues to be an issue, particularly to people in outlying areas, deep rural areas that may be in need, but because of damage to roads and distance, might be hard to get to.
In this situation, from the fort, like I said, when the warnings have come out by, the Weather Bureau, so far in the areas that we have been operating as the Alimdaad Foundation, we found that, look, access to these areas were quite easy because the impact of the rain hasn't been as severe as what you have seen 9 or 8 months ago. Yes, there has been excessive rains in Pietermaritzburg, Durban, all those areas from the reports that we as the Alimdaad Foundation have been receiving via the provincial JOC meeting that we attend every day. So in terms of access at this present moment, to be honest with you, it's quite easy, and disaster management officials are going out in rural areas. Yes, you'll have a situation where part of the roads have been, washed away. There's excessive, mud on the road and so forth, and you have those kind of situations. But if you compare this to the 8 or 9 month floods that we had in a year ago, it was totally difficult to get in those areas where you had to use, Air Force helicopters, etc., and so forth. But this time around, I would think that, coming back to level 5, level 2, which should be much more easier, and we hope the impact is not going to be as great as it was then.
Lessons learned from 8, 9 months ago. What can people do this time around, perhaps as a preemptive measure?
Well, I think it's very important that we now understand as the local municipalities, especially the local municipalities, because our experience as the Alimdaad Foundation working and going out with interventions, we must avoid our communities from staying in floodplain areas. We need to remove our communities out of those and guide them, advise them, and give them higher ground to go and stay. Also, when it comes to the provincial disaster, district disaster, and local disaster, there has to be the planning that has to come. And frankly speaking, when we had the floods 9 months ago in Durban, Ladysmith, etc., and everywhere else, yes, it was a huge challenge for all of us, and it was a great lesson to learn that there has to be proper preparedness, there has to be proper mitigation, and what response are we going to have, and where we are going to place the displaced persons of the floods, etc., etc. I can say that this time around, there has been much more improvements in the activation and in getting things organized and so forth. Yes, there are still gaps here and there, which needs to be improved, hopefully by the disaster management units and, those who are in those positions to make sure that in times of this heavy rains and so forth, that our communities are evacuated, given places of safety, and there has to be immediate interventions for the situation on hand. And of course, not forgetting, after they go back to their homes, to make sure that there are quicker interventions and help to get them back to their normal lives. We had some requests today from the different, local municipalities. The Alimdaad Foundation works in the entire KwaZulu-Natal, and school uniforms that we bought have been, messed up, their shoes, etc., etc. So we're compiling our entire intervention in partnership with the local disaster centers, social development, and the Department of Education, all of them. We're all sitting in the meeting and saying, look, how best we can help these communities who were affected where water had now gone into their homes in the low-lying areas, etc., etc. So yes, to answer your question, we have to do a little bit more homework and be more prepared together as a community, as NGOs, as the government and as individuals, businesses, because you and I know government cannot do it alone. We got to help each other in these times of need. And this is exactly what the Alimdaad Foundation is working in all districts of KwaZulu-Natal, where the need at this moment is very great.
Mr. Karrim, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we wish you the best, and thank you for the hard work that you and your team do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and God bless. And we also pray that this rains all come to beneficial rain for our communities going forward in 2023. All the best to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much. That's Abed Karrim, who's the head of Intergovernment Relations and Disaster Response at the Alimdaad Foundation, talking to us about the area in KwaZulu-Natal that's received a level 9 alert level from weather on the possibility of severe flooding. We'll keep on top of that story for you. We're going to